Hey, what is up guys? My name is Tom Spark and today we're going to show you a video about 26 VPNs that seemingly claim they don't collect logs but actually do. Now, most of these VPNs are smaller VPNs and not necessarily top tier VPNs per se, but if you want to check out some of my favorite VPNs, go ahead and check it out in the description down below. But anyways, let's go ahead and start this video right now. Now, every VPN out there does collect some minor form of logs, basically stuff like your email address and your name, just so you can get signed up with their service. Today we're going to be taking a look at some VPNs that collect a little bit more than they should, so that we can kind of be aware of maybe which VPNs you should avoid. First up on the list is PureVPN. Now PureVPN isn't really my top VPN, maybe because their speeds aren't that great and their apps can be kind of wonky. They have shown some improvements over the years, and they do offer some unique kind of streaming options for people who want to watch Netflix and stuff like that, as well as kind of interesting tiled block kind of platform with their application. Now here on the website they said they do not keep any record of your browsing activities, connection logs, records of any VPN IPs, connection time, history of your browsing, sites you visited, as well as some of this other stuff. So they do collect some stuff at sign up, which is going to be your name, your email address, your payment method. They usually use this stuff to kind of maintain their services and so on. They're saying they have no records of your origin IP address, this kind of stuff, session timestamps. But essentially what they do collect is some minor forms of connection logs, basically timestamps. But the IP and stuff isn't really recorded. And they do collect the bandwidth kind of logs to get an idea of how much bandwidth people are using and stuff like that. So overall, nothing too egregious, but they do collect some logs, so just to keep that in mind. So Hide My Ass VPN is another VPN out there that does collect some logs. Essentially what they collect is a username, a timestamp when you connect, so connection timestamp similar to PureVPN, as well as some bandwidth logs here, the amount data transmitted. But they do also collect the IP address used by you to connect to the VPN and the IP address of the eventual VPN server used by you. So they are collecting more IP logs just to prevent fraud and stuff like that, such as abuses in the network and stuff like that. Not only that, but they do also store some data for 30 days on the secure servers. So they say they do kind of purge it monthly, but there you go. They also kind of monitor VPN accounts to make sure it's not in disagreement with their policies. But yeah, overall they do have some more logs, and I would say PureVPN and some other VPNs out there. So watch out for that. So Hotspot Shield is another VPN out there that does collect some logs. Essentially, Hotspot Shield is supported by advertising, the free version and stuff like that. But with any free VPN, you got to be careful because it probably does collect some logs. With Hotspot Shield, it looks like they collect your IP address, your username, your email, stuff like that, as well as some anonymous aggregate data about which websites users visit and how they use apps. So they say it's anonymous in that it can be linked to you, but it's still a little fishy that they're collecting, this data in the first place, even if it might be anonymous. Additionally, guys, there is some research out there and some articles like this little page here. Essentially, what this article says is that Hotspot Shield has used tracking codes to gather information about users and sell it off to advertisers. So Hotspot Shield might even be more egregious than any other login policy we've looked at already, but it's just something you probably should watch out for, and be mindful of any free VPN that you want to use. I wouldn't really recommend using Hotspot Shield, although it's one of the most popular applications on the iOS and Android app store. For some reason people really like using this VPN if they're new to VPNs and stuff like that. They are a pretty popular VPN, maybe perhaps due to marketing. Anyways, let's go on to the next VPN. So Viper VPN, or the behind the company is Golden Frog. They collect some personal data like your name, email address, phone number, payment information, pretty much standard stuff just to pay and use their VPN. But besides that, guys, they do collect some information about their website, but again, that's pretty standard analytics stuff. But they do retain following data for 30 days, that being the user source IP, the IP address, VPN IP address used by the user, connection start and stop time, and as well as bandwidth data. Now they say they only keep it for 30 days to kind of improve their VPN services, which is probably true, but again, it's just something you should be mindful of, and if you want a no-log VPN, you might want to pass on this one as well. So another VPN you might want to watch out for is Astral VPN. They used to be kind of one of the premier VPNs for China and stuff like that, but a lot of people kind of stopped using them. They noticed the service just kind of degraded. Now Astral VPN claims it's a no logging VPN, but if you kind of go on down the list, you can see some more information here. So for the purposes of Astral VPN, they do keep your connection time, IP address, device type, and Astral VPN application version. Once you disconnect, they say it is removed for their system, so it's used during your account while it's active. They also collect bandwidth data here, and additionally this, they do collect some connection logs and stuff like that. So they say they kind of purge it every time, but overall, guys, just again, this does seem to be a VPN that does collect some logs, so just keep a lookout. So Zug VPN is a smaller VPN out there, but they actually don't collect too many logs. They do collect some bandwidth usage, but as they say here, we have adopted a zero logs policy, so they don't keep any logs of your online activity. They don't really collect any logs on user activity or IP addresses or anything like that. They do seem to collect cookies, which is pretty standard for the website, as well as your email and your name just for checkout. But overall, Zug VPN actually not a horrible logging policy, a little bit less logs than some of the other VPNs we've already mentioned. Anyway, so let's move on to the next one, being buffered VPN. Basically, buffered VPN is another VPN out there that collects a fair bit of amount of logs. It says right here, every time you visit the site, it collects some technical information like the IP and login, stuff like that. But here it says with the software and configuration files we may provide, we collect information from you, like the device identifier. So this could be your IP address, your operating system, browser information, bandwidth, and pretty much connection data. So buffered VPN seems to be a pretty good logger here. Might want to avoid that. So in terms of Tiger VPN, actually VPN I just reviewed, they do collect also a fair amount of data as well. They do collect, your VPN protocol and version, so pretty much collect connection and logs on how you're using the application, as well as your operating system, some connection session information, your favorite servers, as well as debugging information. And they also do collect, some of your account data and stuff like that. But anyways, they do, as you can see here, collect this kind of information, mainly connection, timestamps, bandwidth data, pretty standard logs here, not the worst, but it is a logging VPN. Bolai VPN is an interesting logging policy because they say they do not keep logs on activity or anything like that. Although they do admit to keeping logs of general traffic through our servers, so this would be kind of like bandwidth logs. However, they do say if they notice any unusual activity on servers, like high bandwidth, high number of connections, or CPU usage, they might turn on logs temporarily to identify abusive servers, such as spamming and stuff like that. So, but anyways, it does say that they do collect some logs, like basic connection logs, as well as probably the way you use the app, because how else would they detect CPU usage, and as well as stuff like login and passwords, pretty standard there. So there you go. Worth noting also is that they do not impose bandwidth limits, but it does seem like they are monitoring it if you are using it excessively, and they would log it in that case. So Anonymizer VPN is another VPN I recently reviewed in the past. Unfortunately, they do seem to collect pretty much any logs that falls under the jurisdiction to the maximum extent permitted by applicable law. Anonymizer may monitor email or other electronic communications and may disclose such information in the event it has good faith reason to believe it is necessary for purposes of insurance or compliant with this agreement. So essentially, they could collect anything they really want. These kind of privacy policies that are just so generalized and include pretty much like anything is pretty sketchy, and I would warn you to stay away. Even in favor of one of these other VPNs, which is more specific on how they collect, certain logs like connection or bandwidth logging. Confusingly, IPNator, a VPN I haven't actually checked out yet, doesn't really look that great though, based on like that font. Looks kind of cheapy here. Yeah, it has like a lifetime package. All right. But anyways, their policy is that we do not keep any logs or share any of your private information with any third party, but we will do so if required by law. So it kind of contradicts itself. They do say they may monitor certain aspects of the network, maybe like bandwidth data logs and stuff like that, to improve service. But again, it seems like it kind of contradicts itself by, if you can't collect any logs, how would you hand it over if required to do so by law? So a bit confusing there. Not really sure what that really means, but it's something you probably should be aware of if you're thinking about using IPnator. Haven't even heard of it yet, so check out that one if you want. So checking out this website, Seed4Me is another VPN provider, and it's kind of funny is that they say, do you keep logs? And they answer, yes, we do. And they say that every VPN provider in the world does, and if they say they don't, that they're lying. So and then they go ahead to explain why. In the context of logs, of course, most VPNs collect some kind of logs, maybe like names and stuff like that. So they do seem to kind of keep some aggregated data on the VPN nodes, but I guess they do collect logs. So it's a little confusing here. They do seem to have some kind of separate server to collect logs, and they do connect basic connection logs and stuff like that. Although they seem to purge them for 7 days. But yeah, not the biggest VPN provider, and kind of sketchy. Yeah, they're claiming, that they're better than any other VPN because they admit they keep logs. It's a little confusing there, don't you think? AnonVPN.io says that they collect your email and password, but they do clarify they don't collect any connection times, activity, or origin IPs. However, they do, collect information through their website. But yeah, they don't really keep too many logs, it seems like. So they don't keep any connection logs or bandwidth logs or anything like that. So actually, this is a pretty good no logging policy. The reason I brought this one up on actually on this list is because I've actually seen this brought up on other lists before, and that they do have a logging policy. But from what I see here, it doesn't seem like they really collect any logs really besides, basic information like your login and stuff like that. So this one is just more disputing some, people who claim it has a full logging policy. And I think the reason why is because here it says that privacy of online communications is an important issue. And it seems like they kind of do log from this sentence. They cannot get guaranteed. But they're speaking more here about, the general sense of the internet, not specifically their privacy policy. So just wanted to clear the air a bit here on AnonVPN.io. Even though I don't really have too much experience with it, might have to do a review in the future. So FlyVPN is another VPN. Unfortunately, it does collect a decent amount of logs. However, I do like that they are transparent about it. They do collect your local IP, connection timestamps, VPN IP, port number, and various timestamps, like I said. And they do blacklist your account if you are, just doing stuff you're not really supposed to do. Of course, they don't really want to have you torrenting content here. So it might be a VPN if you like torrenting, maybe to skip this one. And they do seem to have pretty decent logs as far as logs go. Pretty much kind of collects, checks all the boxes for which logs they would collect and could collect. So let's move on to the next one right now. So SunVPN, another VPN that's a little bit smaller, but they do collect, basic stuff like your telephone IP. They do collect your IP, which is a little sketchy, but they do collect, basic things like your name, email, stuff to log in. But they do seem to be another VPN that is kind of strict on, torrenting and copyright protection and stuff like that. So they also say here that they log your various connection logs, your IP address, time connected, as long as, bandwidth collection. So again, another VPN that pretty much collects all the logs that they could. So iPredator.se is another VPN that's smaller, and they're pretty down to the point, but they're a little bit vague in that way, in that they say they minimize the use of logs within our systems and only grant access to them for selected staff for debugging, or maybe if there's some kind of criminal activity suspected. So they do collect a fair amount of logs, and they will give it up if you're suspected of something. It seems like they collect your name, telephone number, email address, payment information, and pretty much connection and probably other statistics used from your VPN. Possibly could even be websites you visit and stuff like that, or your activity as well. So iPredator does seem to have a pretty robust logging policy and a little bit of a vague privacy statement here. Hide IPVPN.com, different from Hide Me VPN service, says they keep a no logs policy, meaning that any data while using VPN is not stored or shared in any form Only data is stored in client's full name and billing activity. We do not store IP address, browsing history. So yeah, they cannot be obligated to share data that does not exist within their no-log policy, which means they're a pretty good no-log VPN. We keep some basic logs like your name and whatnot for billing, but this is another kind of VPN that I saw out there that was saying that people are saying that it does log. Some people are saying hide IPVN will not intentionally monitor private and electronic mail messages sent or received by its client unless required to do so by law. So this could be another VPN that might log in some ways, but they might have contradictory statements. As we can see here, intentionally, it looks like they might have changed their privacy policy not to include that. So this privacy policy may have been changed. So I mean, it does seem like they have a decent privacy policy from what is written. However, it does seem to have changed to have said that they, if required by law, they will provide information in order to monitor its services. So this is a VPN. It seems like it has a decent no logs policy, but in the past, it might have had some differences. It doesn't allow P2P and torrenting, so take that as you may. It might not be the best VPN to use if you really want a strict no logs, torrent friendly VPN anyway. So Hala VPN is one of those VPNs out there that always seems to have some kind of scandal going on, leaking data, whatnot. Obviously, you probably don't want to use this VPN if you don't want to give your logs away. They do collect browser type, web pages you visit, time spent on these pages. I'm not even really going to bother to read this stuff because they pretty much give away your data. They pretty much collect everything. So just don't use Hala VPN. Moving on. So Faceless.me has a pretty small privacy policy actually. So to prevent fraudulent orders, we may ask for a scanned copy of your ID or credit card, which is kind of weird, but a lot of websites with credit cards, they do want to prevent fraud, so I can understand that. They may disclose your personal information if required by law. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be too much information here. In the past, I have a screenshot that says, or they do have a FAQ actually. Let's check that out, where it has some more information. Using facelessme.vpn, do you keep any logs? No, absolutely not. We only check your data usage and IP address, which is required for internal bookkeeping, and it's kept for a limited time. So I mean, they do keep your IP and bandwidth, probably connection timestamps, stuff like that. So I would say that this is a logging VPN, despite their claims that they do not absolutely not collect logs. So there you go. So with betternet.co, which is a website, it looks like they do collect a decent amount of information that you choose to get to them, which is probably going to be like, your credit card, email address, and stuff like that. But they also seem to collect your email, true IP address, username, unique mobile ID. However, it does seem to be anonymously stored, and it is seemingly closed after your session. But it looks like it does collect some of these things and logs these things. But they're just another website that it looks like they're claiming they don't really keep much logs, but they actually do. All right, next up on the list is Ace VPN, which is gonna look like this. So Ace VPN, here we go, another smaller VPN provider. It says they collect and use information through a website and disclosed. Let's see here. We collect personal information provided by site users. Basic stuff here, just when you visit a site. Yeah. One thing here that is a little bit sketchy is that it does say we may employ other companies or individuals to provide certain services or behalf of such as service management, security audit, analyzing customer list and data, or performing marketing or consulting services. They will only have information to these information, but they say they do not log any VPN traffic, or they don't spy on their bandwidth or internet usage. So it doesn't store any personally identifiable information. So not the worst offender here. Pretty small VPN. Looks kind of janky. So again, it does look like they collect some of those basic logs that a lot of VPNs collect just from using the website and signing up. It claims they don't select any other or collect any other logs. But yeah, you're gonna have to watch out for that, I guess. Maybe just skip this VPN. Flow VPN is another VPN out there that looks like they do collect some logs. They collect where a client application is used. So yeah, basically IP address, authentication request, session data, connection logs, pretty much every log they can collect. But yeah, it's another VPN that collects pretty decent logs when you're using your VPN service. All right, let's check out another one called Freedom IP. So Freedom IP is another VPN that looks like they do collect pretty hefty logs: IP address, start time, end time, data received, data sent, as well as some basic things kept by the website, as well as some basic details when capturing, your service as login and creating an account. They do not record content or DPI. But yeah, pretty standard logs here for logging VPN, just kind of collecting everything from your session there. All right, let's move on to the next and last VPN that actually logs. So Iron Socket says they don't log any information or content while using their services. However, it's kind of vague here. Actually, they do collect your IP address, browsing type, offering, and time and visit when visiting the site, and so on, as well as when you use the services. You're going to give up your email and whatever, pretty basic things here. But upon use of services, we collect time and data, session connection, so connection logs, IP logs, and additionally bandwidth logs. So pretty standard there for logging VPN as well. All right, guys, thanks for checking out this long video about 26 VPNs that actually do keep logs. Most of these VPNs just collect logs about bandwidth, IP addresses. They collect, information about what operating system you're using. They collect, connection logs and things like that. When you're connecting to VPN, how you're connecting, where you're connecting from most of the time, as well as all these VPNs do collect information on, how you're visiting the site and stuff like that with analytic data. They also collect your name, your email address, most often your credit card information to prevent fraud. Now, most of the VPNs on this list aren't huge offenders. Really, maybe perhaps Hide My Ass and Hala sticking out to me right now as maybe the biggest offenders and some of the biggest logging VPNs out there with kind of bad reputation. A lot of these VPNs are just kind of smaller VPNs that aren't really, quite sure what they're doing, and they're just kind of collecting this information to maybe improve their services somehow. But why pick one of these VPNs when you could pick a VPN that absolutely assures you that they don't keep logs? They don't really need to keep logs. And if you're curious about some of my top VPNs, go ahead and check in the description down below, and I'll see you again on the next video. See you later.